funny thing happened on the way here. And I'm not talking about on my way here today. I'm going back 50 years or so when I was 50 plus years. I just had my 50th high school class reunion. It was weird. Good thing we had name tags because going, oh, hi, hi, Brad. Thank you for remembering me. But 50 years ago, I was growing up on a farm in southwest Michigan near the Indiana border. And if you would have told me today that I'd be standing here in Prescott, Arizona, Charlotte Hall Museum, with the Ron Williams, who holds the same office as Virgil Earp did all those years ago in 1979.
1979.
So, a little farther back.
He was into disco and everything.
I saw him. He's not a good dancer. Was not a good dancer. But he would have told me that. But my father was maybe the most educated farmer around, as far as I know. Book learning. He wasn't that good of a farmer, but we had cattle for a while. And there's not a lot to do when you grow up on a farm. Your friends are miles away, but he had a library. He loved history, and he was a teacher for a while who became a farmer. And I would, what do? We don't have anything else to do. We'd run out and play with the cattle, and that kind of thing there, which I did, but that got all the flies. Flies were bad. But he had these books that I'd read, and my mother was Native American, so he had a special love for Native American history. So I would read those books. I mean, I'm talking about from third grade on. I started reading those books. I didn't think anything of it. This seemed like the thing to do. And then, like I said, my dream when I was growing up was to run in the Olympics, the metric mile. And that's what I lived for. I had a grade point average in high school of 2.2. I mean, I just barely got by. You know, you had to have a 2 to be able to participate in sports, and that's all I did. One time I accidentally made the honor roll. I mean, it was an accident. People looked in the thing and they saw my name and they're going, what the heck happened there? And I got good at cheating as part of it, but I got lucky. But you know, just to think that I'd be up here today. But I had an innate love of history that it just was part of me for as long as I can remember. 1981, let's fast forward to 1981. I moved out to the Navajo Indian Reservation to become a teacher. Thought I'd try it for a year, and I'm still here. Fast forward a little more, so 12 years on the reservation, the 19 long years in that town down there that you can see the lights at night from here, Phoenix. I was a fish out of water there. When I lived there, to get out of town, I would come up here. Maybe some of you have done the same thing. But I'd come up here and I just fell in love with Prescott. They call it everybody's hometown. It felt like my hometown, even when I was down there in Phoenix. I would watch Junior Bonner, Stewart's back there, his dad. I would watch Junior Bonner just so I could see Prescott, you know. I would have it on the computer. I wanted to be here so bad. 2011, moved up here, and in all those years coming up here, where do you go when you're an outsider? You go to Whiskey Road, you go to the plaza, the square, you know, that's where you go. And you hear all these stories about, the stories I was hearing was about Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, over and over and over. I'm going, my gosh, that's exciting. So when I moved here, I wanted to learn about that history. I found books about Prescott, but didn't find any. I figured these stories I was hearing about Wyatt Earp, they must come from a book. Doc Holliday must come from a book, because that's where all good stories come from. I went to look for the books on Whiskey Row history. There were none that focused on the history of Whiskey Row. And even in the Prescott books, I didn't see anything about Wyatt Earp. So I, just fascinated by it. So I was working on my master's thesis, making it into a book. It was on the Geronimo campaign. But when I got here, I said, I want to learn about the history of Whiskey Row. So I took that as almost like a calling, like this is God saying, okay, you get to do this. And I was going, okay, that's going to be fun. And it was really fun. And I started going over to the archives now. It's called the Research Center now. And I go in there every time I had a chance. About 3 years or so. I mean, I was constant in there. And I started researching, and I started with the fire, because I knew something about it. Then I realized I got to go all the way back. So I went all the way back to the very first newspaper, 1864. I forget exactly what month it was. The very first Arizona Miner that was put out by Richard McCormick. And I literally went through every page of every Prescott newspaper from 1864. I probably went all the way to 1902. I might have skipped a paper or two, but not many. And as I was going, I kept waiting for Wyatt Earp to show up. Never showed up. And I started getting a little suspicious, and I knew a little bit about history. But finally in 1877 or so, Virgil shows up. And I didn't know much about Virgil, and Ron's going to be talking about the gunfight he had here. But it wasn't until after Wyatt was down in Tombstone, and there was this gunfight you may have heard about.
It was a small one.
It was a small one,
yeah,
but it's world famous now, near the OK Corral. You probably know it wasn't at the OK Corral, but that made a good, that sounded good, the fight at the OK Corral. Doc Holliday didn't show up, Wyatt Earp didn't show up, but after that, the drama down there, they showed up all the time. And that's pretty standard. I'll talk about that later, we'll get to that. But I just thought, where are they? So here we are today. Let's tell you a little story. So I got real upset because I wrote this book, and it's got great stories in it. They're not my stories, they're just stories I came across. Just some that were stranger than fiction. They're better than fiction. You can't make this stuff up. And I thought, I was a little delusional, I think, that, because I would go to Whiskey Row and do, research on Whiskey Row in a saloon. I'd do some research on Whiskey Row. And I thought, because when the book came out in 2015, right before Christmas, it sold like hotcakes. I remember going to the Peregrine Brooks store, and it was sitting right there at the counter on display. And, I go, well, I heard this book's really good. The lady goes, yeah, we sold about 50 this week. And I go, well, that's really good. So I thought, I'll start going to Whiskey Row. I'll sit in the saloons there, and they'll be telling us stories from this book. Boy, was I delusional. What do they talk about? To this day, what do you hear? You hear the Wyatt Earp stories. And I'll get to that, but I started developing this animosity toward the Earps, because why aren't people talking about? And every now and then someone would hear a story. I'd be so grateful.
Wyatt killed 3 people behind the palace in the alley.
Well, that's just one.
Yeah, that's just one of the stories.
Yeah, you added one. Okay, it's getting better.
Yeah,
it's getting better. But
every 10 years you have to add in a person.
Yeah, he was something here in Prescott. All the things he didn't do was amazing. But so I developed this animosity toward the Earps, and I just got so sick of hearing about the Earps. Earp, Holliday, Doc did this, and going. And by then I go, they're not even true. And I'd just be telling people, I felt the bad guy. They're not even true. And people didn't want to hear that. They would look so dejected when I'm going, it didn't happen. So time went on, and 2018 I had a personal loss, and Ron was kind enough. Him and friends had been going down to Tombstone to Eldorado days for years, and he invited me down, and I accepted. I had never been to Tombstone, even though I moved to Arizona in almost said 1881. I'm so used to dealing in that era. 1981, like I said, I thought I'd just come and go back to Michigan. I loved it in Michigan. But I said, yeah, I'll go. And Ron texts me and he goes, we're going to rig you up. I mean, he's going to dress us up. And I literally said to him, all right, anything but a bleep, 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 Earp. I think I used the F word in an adjective form, flipping.
Yes.
Told anything but a flipping or he laughed, ha ha ha. Well,
I told him that's fine. You could be a miner, you could be a businessman, you could be a townie, you could be a cowboy, whatever you want to do. You don't have to be a frickin' Earp.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a miner. I'm gonna be a miner.
Whatever you want to do.
When I got down there and I looked, they took me to the store and I saw these people walking around dressed up like this, these clothes hanging on the rack, and you think I'm not gonna buy those clothes? I mean, I went right to them, and next thing I know, we're walking around like that. And I say I'm a humble farm boy, but you're an instant celebrity when you dress up like that. And we're getting our picture taken. Just had a great time. And
you hung your head in shame and said, I'm a frickin' Earp.
No, I didn't hang my head in shame, but here I am. But so time went on. Wanted to go back. There was something that happened when I had all this animosity toward Tombstone, stealing Prescott's thunder. So I drove. There's a point where you drive down that, I don't know the name of the road, but you
Highway
go
80.
to this hill and you see Tombstone. Something happened to me. I just go. It was just magical. Even though it's a tourist draw and everything like that, something happened. I went on. I call it the dark side. It really was. I just finally go, I'm as fascinated by this as anybody else. Then Wendy and I met. Where is she? She's back there selling books. She's always selling. But she went to the next Eldorado days. We got dressed up. She fell in love with doing that. She said, why don't we do that in Prescott? So we started dressing up. We formed a club and we started going every Friday. And some of you know I'm a songwriter. I even wrote a song, and for years I've been working on the song, couldn't get the lyrics. And I even put, this is how far I went on the other side. I'll be Wyatt and you'll be Sadie. It's all about us dressing up and strutting our stuff on the road. You haven't get a chance. Some of you were in that video. We had a ball doing that video. And when we got married, guess what we dressed up as? I converted the song into, changed the lyrics to fit the wedding day. And every time I see this picture, I think about the shy wife I married. I was literally pulling her down the aisle. She's like, this is great, But we had a ball. Everybody else dressed up. And I love this story here. This is my son, who never dresses up. He is actually kind of shy. But he was my best man, and he's going down the aisle here to that song. And, he wears the same size as I do and everything. We dressed him up, and he was loving it. And then after the wedding, they went over to Whiskey Road, to Matt's Saloon. Next day at breakfast, he comes over to me and goes, Dad, I went to Matt's Saloon dressed like that. I've never been hit on so many times in my life. And I go, I'm not your pimp, but what did I tell you? I'm trying to get him dressed like that again. He just won't do it. Well, we had a ball. But when this was happening, before all this, I started thinking, God, is Prescott just this Tombstone wannabe? And that's what I thought for a while. And I was going, because it doesn't have to be, because by now I have 5 books out, but we got all these stories out, and they're just amazing stories. Ron and I we've teamed up with the Talking Glass Media, Signals, Arizona. We're doing this podcast, Whiskey Road History Show. We got one that's in production now. We did 2 of those stories, so stay tuned for that. That was a lot of fun. They do a really good job.
They do an amazing job. And this will be this same slide here will be at the end, but it's Cast 11. If you look at, if you just go on Google, do Cast 11, you'll find the podcast. You can scroll down, find the Whiskey Road History Show, and they have them all on the web.
And we just did one on Virgil that came out real well, so you can check that one.
Yeah, the first one's a bit dicey. We're redoing that one.
Yeah, we learned we can actually do it pretty well.
Yeah.
But after some time, I started realizing, just like me, it's not a wannabe thing. It's the fact that you often hear they were here first. That's very, very true, and we're going to accentuate that. But this Tombstone drama is world famous. They got clubs over in Europe that I know about that focus on this. It's wanting to be involved with the famous Tombstone dramas, the Wyatt Earp, it's in the movies. It's just, we're just fascinated by it. There's a point where I just go to myself, I go, I'm just as fascinated, if not more, as anybody else. But want to be part of that. And Prescott is more connected to that story than any other outside town.
More than Dodge City, more than Las Vegas, New Mexico.
In more ways than one.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to. So I want to start with comparing and contrasting Prescott and Tombstone as they were back in the day. Show you the differences and the how they relate to each other and how they were alike in some ways. But this picture here is really fascinating to me. After my book, I have a Facebook page, Whiskey Row History, and I posted this picture that is the oldest known photograph of Prescott, which that's going to come up. And this guy, Patrick, sent me a picture of this picture here, and he goes, well, we think this picture is actually the oldest picture, because you can see if I can get this to work here. Right there, Prescott, Arizona, 1864. And you look at it, there's Thumb Butte. So doesn't it look like a photograph? Yeah. So this often happens. When you're researching one thing, something you've been looking for, you get an answer. That's happened so many times. In this instance, I was researching Daniel Francis Mitchell, who is the photographer of the famous Doc Holliday picture, which is going to come up here. There's boxes in the archives over here, I think 3 boxes of duplicates, and they're often like this, it's called stereographs. But what happened is I'm looking, and all of a sudden this picture shows up in the Daniel Francis Mitchell file. I turn it over, and look what I found. There's his mark, I don't know what you call it actually, but here's what happened. I knew that Daniel Francis Mitchell had come here in 1876. I'm going, it can't be 1864. I don't know if you can read it, but it says Prescott in 1864 from a painting made in that year by Alice Dickinson, later known as Alice Blythe. So he took a picture of that painting and sold it as a photograph. Yeah. And what I want to show you here is it sure looks like she did a great job. I mean, it's just an amazing picture. But what I want to show you here is this is 1864. This is what it looked like. What do you notice? Not much. There's hardly anything here. Prescott has been, in some books, has been presented as this mining camp that was already here. And there was just all these, mining camp. You've seen pictures of mining camps. It was not, and when, the governor's party, Governor Goodwin and all those other guys that were with him, Richard McCormick and so on, the governor, what's the word I'm looking for? Abraham Lincoln appointed these guys to run Arizona and pick a place for a capital. And when they're on their way, they heard about gold being found in this area. They said, well, that sounds good. Maybe we'll set up a government and maybe we'll get rich as well. But gold is mined. You can mine gold by yourself. Not like silver, which that'll come up, silver and copper. It takes an army to do that. You can find gold in its natural state. I have a friend that has boxes and boxes of nuggets. He lives on the Hassayampa River. But what do you notice here? I think I counted less than a dozen buildings there. Now here is the oldest known photo that I was just mentioning. I think almost all historians, Prescott historians, believe this is 1869. It's at least 1868 because there's the Diana Saloon, was established late in 1868.
Which is now St. Michael's.
Hotel St. Michael. But if you'll notice, there's nothing. This is Montezuma Street. Look past the building here. There's nothing there.
That's Whiskey Row.
Yep, and right there, that's where the Capitol was. That was the Capitol building. It turned into a brewery. I love they turned the Capitol building into a brewery. That's typical Prescott. But you see there's the plaza. There was a building on there, but look at compare. There's not much more there than there was there. This is 5 years after Prescott had been founded. So it was never that mining camp. Miners would come into town, and it was a supply center, And that's one reason Prescott kind of grew. That there was these some shops, stores were just catered to minors. And this is about 10, 15 years later. Now we have a row. There's the Diana Saloon again, where Hotel St. Michael is. Now you have a row. Now it's getting populated. This took 10, 15 years. This could be as late as 1883 because this section of Whiskey Row burned down in 1883. So think about the time it took for that to evolve. Of course, today Prescott is a fully functioning city. We have tourism. Everybody goes to Whiskey Row. It's part of our economy, but we don't depend on it like you'll see Tombstone does. Now that is a boomtown. That is Tombstone. Silver was discovered. There was nothing there. Silver was discovered in 1877. This is early 1880s right here. It takes an army to mine silver. It's a whole process. And with that army, those guys are going to want saloons. There's going to be hotels, grocery stores, mercantile, blacksmiths. People were rushing to set up a business there, and it grew extraordinarily fast. Tombstone has its Whiskey Row, that's what I like to call it, Allen Street. This is where all the good stuff happened, the shootings and all that. I call that Tombstone's Whiskey Row, and I call Whiskey Row our Allen Street. There it is today. I took that picture from a hotel. Of course, it's really a product of the movies. Now, this is Eldorado days where they do the shootouts. There's always some guy. They're all the same. It starts where they're in a saloon. And next thing, these guys are yelling at each other, and bam, 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 they shoot each other. Or it's the women yelling at the men, and the women shoot the men down. You never see any ladies get shot, which, they got nice dresses. But these guys...
And those dresses are expensive.
They're expensive. They usually write the script. But these guys, some of them are hilarious. They get shot. They're my age. And they fall down. They're second. It's hilarious. It's great entertainment. That's Eldorado days. And there's Tombstone today. Not much to it. There's one of the authentic buildings there, historically, is the courthouse. It's a good place to visit. Now I want to get to what it was like at that time, how Prescott felt about Tombstone. At first, when the silver was being discovered, they're going, this is good. This is good for us. And it was being reported all the time. I have great big files. Microsoft will just copies of newspaper files of what Prescott was writing in the Arizona Miner about Tombstone. First, they were preoccupied by it. They stayed preoccupied by it, but it became a threat later on. But at first, Arizona was a territory that wanted to become a state. Very badly wanted to be. And we were the 48th state. We were the last of the 48. But America needed silver. And we're going, hey, America needs us now. Reports like this were very common. Federal reports. You can see this is early on, May 2, 1879. This is good for us. We were the capital by then. You probably know we were the capital. It moved to Tucson, came back to us right when silver was being discovered. The capital came back to us. So that was kind of a odd timing, as you'll kind of see. But it was a good thing, viewed as a good thing. Then Prescott started going, wait a minute, we're losing people. And we were losing miners, we were losing people who wanted to set up business there. Not that they were any more prominent, but some of the big names that you'll see, lawyers, businessmen, they were moving down. And Prescott was feeling a little inferior. Plus, there was this fear. Prescott wanted to stay in the capital. We like being the capital. They were afraid because the population was moving down that way. We were going to lose the capital again, as you know we did, but not to that area. I think I saw a report that Yavapai County was a few thousand, and that Pima County, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Pima County had 17,000 people. The greater population was down that way and moving that way with Tucson and now Tombstone growing. A historian put it this way, I think put it best. He said Prescott lost about 100 people or so. This is early on. This is when the Earps were going down, and you just couldn't.
And this is a town of less than 1,800 people.
Yeah.
And they lost essentially 10% of the population, 5% of the population left.
Yeah, and 100 might be probably a
Conservative?
under. Yeah, probably could be. He's just making a guess there. He's one of the prominent historians. This is typical of what was being written. Like I said, people of all different trades were going down there to set up. This mechanic went down there. He wanted to set up shop, but somebody already beat him to it. There was already mechanics down there. He comes back and says, "Don't go down there. It's already these businesses already taken." And Wyatt Earp actually went there. He wanted to convert his wagons into stagecoach and freight hauling, but he went down there and he goes, "Somebody beat me to it." So that's why he went back into law. He was saying, "Don't go down there." This is right about the time when Virgil and Wyatt were going down there. People were going down there, coming back, going, "Don't do it. You're wasting your time." They beat us to it. I had to put this in here, as I love this part. At this time in 1880, there were a lot of negative little blurbs about Tombstone. Anytime they get poked fun at Tombstone, they would, even the name, they're going, "Why would you name a place Tombstone? Why would anybody want to go to Tombstone? How morbid." And whoever this reporter was, laughed. Tombstone has 48 saloons, but not one church. This is 1880. Within a year, they had a church. This is the refurbished church there, but they had a church by 1881. And when I read that, I already knew the punchline here, because Prescott didn't have a church until 1875. When was it established? 1864. Took 11 years for us to get a church building, and according to Drew Desmond, which many of you know, it had several different denominations that went to that church. And I'm going, "What are you guys laughing at?" But both places, these towns that start new, they don't have law enforcement at first, so I would say they have growing pains. You sometimes hear people saying, the West wasn't that wild. It was that wild. You look at the newspapers, there's one shooting after the other. Cochise County, 55 times higher with the murder rate than we have now. And here's what they said about Prescott in 1871. Sylvester Mowry was a prominent pioneer, and he came for a visit. I think he came for about a month. And he wrote, "Saloons till you can't rest, where they kill a man at least once a week." Remember, we only had a few hundred people. But man, things are looking brighter there in Prescott, because only one man was killed. And I'm going, okay, that's improvement. We only killed one man. And I looked up this murder, and it happened in a post office of all things. So somebody went postal back in 1871. But that just cracked me up. So Prescott was, in that time, the good people were worried about its existence, because there were so many shootings every night, guns going off. Drew and I wrote this book, Murder and Mayhem in Prescott, and we left out a lot. I just put it there for that reason. We got 16 good murders and good mayhem in there. It's not good bedside reading, I'll tell you that. So now I want to get to the people. Prescott and Tombstone, let me start by saying this as far as the port. Prescott was the capital. So a lot of the decisions that affected Tombstone were made in Prescott. So there's that. So and Prescott's geographically, it's in the middle, so it kind of came through. How many times have we heard this? They were here first. All roads leading to Tombstone went through Prescott, and that's very true. Even Wyatt Earp, he just kind of passed through. But I remember at a Westerns meeting, we had a Doc Holliday biographer, Victoria Wilcox, and at the end of her talk, she said something like, "And it all began here in Prescott." We all went, "Yay!" Because and it's true. And Ron and I started talking about this a few years ago, about all the connections, and it just gets bigger and bigger. So here's a guideline for you as far as the big names go. Virgil Earp settled in Prescott. Ron's going to be talking about that. Doc Holliday sojourned. He was here for a while. I think he was thinking about staying. I really do. Wyatt Earp slept here. I'm just going to tell you, he's the smallest part of the Prescott Tombstone story, but what are the stories about? And I'll just tell you, somebody was making up stories because nobody knows. We know he he stayed at Virgil's place, him and Allie. The others, James Earp and some of the other family were there. We know that his dad actually came through, Nicholas Earp, but they were just passing through. So I'm writing a series of books on the Prescott Tombstone connection. I can write a whole chapter on all the whoppers I've heard. Wendy and I were in Vail, we heard one. This guy said, "Yeah, I was a Prescott, heard the story about Wyatt Earp," and I didn't say anything because, but Wendy goes, "Yeah, what'd you hear?" And the guy goes, "Oh, we heard that, Wyatt would spend his winters in Tombstone, but each summer in Prescott."
Wyatt was a snowbird.
He was a snowbird, not the line, he was a snowbird in Tombstone. But that was just another one ago. They keep adding up. There's so many I won't even start. When did that all happen? After these movies that we love so much. Research. I was doing research in Birdcage. Sitting there talking to a bartender. You might have seen him. He wears a bow tie, but he's been a bartender since 1970s. And I asked him, I said, back in that day, did people talk about Wyatt Earp? And he goes, no, not at all. 80s. I go, when did it start? And he thought, and he goes, it was after this movie. Everybody wanted to talk about that. And then called The Perfect Storm, then Kevin Costner's movie came out, so those stories evolved after that. Wyatt passed through, no one knew who he was. That's a misconception that he was famous when he went to Tombstone. Nobody knew who he was. John Bosenegger, fantastic historian, wrote, he was far from being a famous lawman. This is when he's passing through Prescott, when he entered Tombstone. He was an obscure character. They knew him in some Kansas town. He actually had to fight to get elected, and he never did get elected. He was desperate to get elected. He did some crazy things to get elected. Yes, someone was saying, yes, where are you, Amy? She's here somewhere. He was a good-looking guy, wasn't he? Yeah, he was a good-looking guy. He looks like a pimp right there, but he probably was. Morgan he never saw Prescott. This was kind of interesting. They had a brother, an older brother. Nicholas was married before he married Virginia, the Earp boys we know, their mother, and he had a son, Newton. Newton actually had a more extensive lawman career than all the other boys. I mean, he was very impressive. Somebody wrote that you could write a textbook based on his exploits, but he came first. Ron's going to talk about this. He came before Virgil got here, and according to his biographer, Newton was here first with his wife Jenny. He's the one that found the sawmill. We think he squatted. There's some debate whether it was actually a sawmill, but that's always been what it said. But he was here first. Guess why they left? His wife Jenny was very religious. There wasn't enough Christian life in in Prescott. So that's why they left. Then Virgil came, and they stayed on that property. We think it was near Plum Butte, but we don't.
And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're working on that. Some new information's come up that making us rethink everything. But Ed Shiflin is the guy who is credited for founding Tombstone because he found the ore that was very good that the silver boom hit. But he's the guy that is credited for starting the whole thing. He was quite a character. His ties to Prescott is that before he went down there, he was here and he did some mining in the Bradshaws. I don't know if he was successful. I don't think so. He actually went to the Grand Canyon. A lot of the miners would go and look at the Grand Canyon and go, man, there's got to be some good stuff there. But there's not some good stuff there. Except with the Colorado, I guess you get a little gold, but not much. But I told you that the Prescott paper would make fun of the name Tombstone. Well, Ed Shiflin, he goes down there, he makes his money, he opens his mine, he sells his mine. He's a prospector, he's not a town developer. he wants to do some more prospecting. He gets rich, comes back through Prescott. The minor reporter, one of the minor reporters knew he was coming through, and they asked him, well, why Tombstone? And he told them that story that you've probably heard, that he went down there, he was talking to some of the soldiers down there. They asked him, what are you hoping to find out there? He goes, well, I'm hoping to find good stone, good silver ore. And he did, and they laughed at him. The only stone you'll find out there is your tombstone. And he remembered that. That's why he named it that. But after that, you didn't see. It was almost like, oh, that makes sense. That's great. Richard Gerd is actually the guy he called upon to help him out. He was a very well-established miner. That's him right there. But he was an original Prescottonian. He right here, you can see he was gone, came back. But it says he built the second house erected in Prescott. So he was a prominent Prescottonian.
He also built most of the high-end real estate in Tombstone, the Gerd block, which had the Epitaph, it had the Miners Exchange, it had the county building, everything on Gerd block on Fremont Street was he built.
Yeah, he had more to do with the development of Tombstone than the Shilton boys. But Ed Shilton went off to California, and there's reports that he was a very charitable guy. He was a pretty cool guy. Thomas Fitch was the Earp's lawyer after the whole near the OK Corral thing. He defended them successfully. There was an inquest to see if this should go to trial for murder, and he successfully defended the Earps and Doc Holliday. He was here first, but he was well known before he got to Prescott. He came to Prescott in 1877, like Virgil did. He was known as the Silver-Tongued Orator. He was a fantastic speaker. I've read his speeches. Even reading his speeches, you're going, wow, that's some good stuff. But he came here, he set up, he was a lawyer. He defended Brigham Young successfully, the polygamy charges, and he wasn't Mormon. He had a newspaper in Virginia City, Nevada. Guess who one of his employees were? A guy named Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. They worked together. Mark Twain had a lot of things to say about Fitch that were interesting. There was a little rivalry going on between them. But he set up an office there on Cortez Street. So he would have been on the side north of the plaza, on the west side where the office and Raven over on that side, he had an office there. But how could he have known? He's one of those, Fitch probably knew Virgil and some other guy I'll show you here in a minute. But the most interesting thing he did, he was involved in the theater. He was an actor. And he established the Prescott Drama Club. And there's a book, I might be in the bookstore over here, it's out of print now, but it was written by a dear friend of mine, Tom Collins, and it's all about Tom Fitch starting the theater here in Prescott. It's very, very interesting. But if you're a praying person, please pray for Tom. Tom has leukemia. He was a volunteer, one of the volunteers over at the archives. And he's a great friend, and he wanted to be here today, but he told me his leukemia is at a crisis point, and he's down in Phoenix. And if you could say a prayer for him, I'd appreciate it. And another connection here, they're not here today, but Brian and Michelle Beaver, Prescottonians, bought the Fitch House, made it into an Airbnb, and they refurbished it beautifully. They gave my friends the Smelters over there, they gave us a couple free nights. There's a guest house over here. The inside, you can tell, is 1880s. It's a great experience, but it's right there at Fremont and 6th Street, but they did a fantastic job there. This guy's interesting. He was the Earp's doctor, Dr. George Goodfellow. He came about the same time, 1877. He was an aggressive guy. He was the kind of guy that when he'd show up, he goes, all you other guys, get out of the way. I'm here. You other doctors, I'm here. Don't worry about it. He was that kind of guy. He looks like kind of a character here. But he came here. He started his medical practice here. He was a contract surgeon at Fort Whipple for about 3 weeks. That's what he's portrayed as most of it. But he actually had an office opposite office row. So on the east side where the Paragon is and Papa's Italian, he had an office there. Look at his hours, 9 to 1. He had other things to do apparently. He became the world's, some people say the world's foremost expert on gunshot wounds, treating gunshot wounds, because he had a lot of practice in Tombstone. I think he's the guy that worked on Virgil.
He's the one who saved Virgil's arm.
And tried to save Morgan. Hey, gotta tell this story here, it's the best, gives you an indication of what kind of guy he was. There was this terrible event called the Bisbee Massacre. These guys tried to rob a store of some sort.
It was a grocery store that doubled as the bank, and it was payroll day for the Bisbee mine. And
it went bad. And there was 5 of them, but there was one guy that planned it. So it went bad, some people got killed, a pregnant woman got killed, an officer, a law officer got killed. And they went to trial, and the 5 guys that were actually part of that, that did the actual killing, were sentenced to hang. The guy who planned it, John Heath, was given a life sentence. The trial was held in Tombstone. The people of Tombstone goes, nah, that's not the way it works. And one of the most extraordinary Wild West pictures you'll ever see. These guys, that's John Heath hanging there. They all dressed up for it. They're posing with this guy dead right there. But there was a coroner's inquest. They got Goodfellow to do it. He actually wrote this. You can see the handwritten copy at the Tombstone courthouse. He wrote, here's the cause of death. The emphysema of the lungs. Bisbee's, it's a mile-high city too. It's hard to breathe there. It might have been caused by strangulation. I wasn't there. I don't know. The jury actually took that, and when they read the sentence, getting these guys off the hook, they actually read, we think he died of emphysema. There's a picture right there, people. You can look, he's hanging there. They're really proud of it, but that's just an extraordinary.
Self-inflicted or otherwise.
Yeah, I think it was otherwise. That's what it shows there. You guys have heard of Sam Hill, where the Western Heritage Center. He had a hardware store there. He went down there with his buddy Fredericks, I forget his first name, set up a 10 shop right there on Allen Street. That's what Sam Hill was like. Remember this guy from the movie, from the Vendetta Posse, Turkey Creek, Jack Johnson? He came, his real name was John Blount. He came up to Walker, did some mining, and he's buried there somewhere. Historians will look for his grave. It's up there somewhere. He died in Walker, and his family is buried here all around Prescott. So we get to the famous guys now. As you know, John Henry Doc Holliday was here in Prescott, and I've been working on what the importance of that was, him being here, and how that's significant, because it hadn't really been looked at. Even in the books, there's very little written about Doc in Prescott, because very little was known. But you look hard enough, you got to make a lot of speculation, but that's what you do with Doc anyway. But he came, Wyatt came through after Virgil said, we had to get down to Tombstone. He came through Las Vegas, New Mexico. Doc and Kate were there, and Kate wrote that it was when, after Doc decided to go with them, Kate wrote that when they were coming to Prescott, that's when they became such good friends, and that rings true to me. I call his time here Doc Holliday at the Crossroads because I think Doc and Kate broke up here. So the story she tells, Kate contradicts herself a lot. So they came to Prescott. Doc decides to stay in Prescott. Wyatt wants them to come down to Tombstone. They're arguing about going to Tombstone. They ride down together from Prescott down to Gillette, because the mine over here was in Tip Top, and she says that's where they separated. She told a couple different stories. Here's the one I believe. I believe he came down. She thought he went on to Tombstone, but he actually went back to Prescott and then back to Las Vegas, New Mexico, and then back to Prescott. She goes over to Tip Top. What's a Tip Top? Men. You know what Kate does for a living, right? She didn't say that's what she did, but she was there for a week, and she shows up going with some money. So it's one of those things you put 2 and 2 together. She was a businesswoman. And then, this speaks volumes. I didn't hear from Doc for some time. It was at least 6 months. So I think they actually broke up. Doc's decided what he has to do. He comes back to Prescott, shows up at the June census. There he is right there. House 52. He's rooming with Richard Elliott and John Gosper. Richard Elliott was the owner of the house. He was a man of many wearing different hats, but he was a temperance leader. And you're laughing already because you know Doc was quite a drinker. So Doc lived with the temperance leader. That must have been some interesting conversations. And John Gosper was the acting governor at the time. Fremont was the actual governor, but he was gone the entire time. And he was living with the acting governor, and he's the guy that dealt with the old Tombstone drama, not Fremont. That must have been interesting because Doc was, you know, he could be on either side of the law. There's an advertisement for his boarding house. You see here, notwithstanding dull times, hot weather, gentlemen can find 2 doors north of D. Henderson's fireproof store. There's how we found, actually Sue Kissel, a researcher here, volunteer, found the lots that Elliott owned, so we were able to locate where the house was. So it was right behind where the Bashford-Burmester courts are now. We think his house was actually right there. And recently we had a plaque unveiling. We put a plaque there. So the Sanborn map shows a house here with a porch on it and everything. So we think it was lot 16. And we got real lucky placing the plaque. It's just right where lot 16 would have been. Here's a drawing of that time. So this house probably right in there. And if you haven't seen our plaque, we're real proud of it. I go to check it every now and make sure it's still there. It's still there. People actually go look at it. But it's behind right where the parking lot is, behind the Burmester building. There's what Gurley Street looked like when Doc was here. But the main thing, the big thing he did here was get his picture taken. I'm talking about Daniel Francis Bentel. His shop was the Capitol Art Gallery. That was where the Foothills Bank is now, 147 North Cortez Street. I don't think they know that it's where Doc got his picture taken, but on the back of the photo is D.F. Mitchell, photographer, so that's how we learned that he was actually, photograph was taken in Prescott. There it is. This is many years later. We had it cleared up for the plaque, so that's really a good what it originally would have looked like right there. You can see what Doc looked like. You can see he was frail. It's funny with it. And I'm wearing a coat today. I got a custom-made coat. It's called a pail top. You know what pail top means? It means coat. So I got a pail top coat. That's what they call these. I wanted to show this picture there to show you what happens when you handle photographs without gloves on. This is when it was first published. You can see the sides here, it's pretty clear. This is in 1973. It didn't become famous until much later, but you see how it was handled, people grabbing it on the side there. And it's only one of the 2 known photos of Doc. That was when he was after dental school. Learn more about Doc here. I wrote a booklet for the unveiling event where we're keeping that in print. Kate, of course, is here. She's fascinating. I'm not going to talk much about her. She's my current research subject. But here's the fascinating part. As you know, she came to the Pioneers Home in 1931. That was the same book, the famous book came out about Wyatt Earp. And she comes here, and they thought, Stuart Lake and Wyatt Earp thought she was dead. So they wrote some bad stuff about her. A guy named Anton Mazanovich gives her a copy. She reads it, she gets really ticked off, and she writes her own story up there in the Pioneers Home. And that's what I'll be writing about, but that's just fascinating. I've thought about calling the book Doc and Kate, a love story, because it doesn't give you warm, fuzzy feelings. And I'll end with this and hand it over to the Constable. Josephine was here, but her story is not what you saw in the movies. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but you know, she actually kept herself out of the book because her true story was not something she was proud of. She's not in that book at all. And she was married, common law married, I guess, for 40-some years. But later on, she told the story to this guy, Glenn Boyer, and she made the story up that she came and she joined Pauline Markham's acting troupe, and she ran away from home to be in this troupe, and she was an actress. It made the movies that Marie Osmond actually played her in the movie I Married Wyatt Earp. As you know, she was portrayed as an actress in Tombstone. I'm gonna let the constable talk about this because I'll give you the punchline. And it's not something. She came to Prescott with a group of girls, but she was a prostitute, a 13-year-old prostitute. She shows up in a divorce document as Sadie Mansfield, and I'll let the constable talk about that. So she came with a group headed by this lady named Hattie Wells. She's a madam. Right behind this is where the palace is now. So where the parking garage is now, that's where she worked, and a rather famous guy. So just recently, it's come out. A guy named Peter Brand knocked it out of the park, and without a doubt, Josephine Earp was Sadie Mansfield in Prescott. If you're interested, he's from Australia, so it's a self-published book, but it's a fascinating read. It's not real pleasant, but it's a fascinating read. I will be back to answer some questions, but I'm going to hand this off to the constable. Start with this fellow here. Thank you, everybody.